dear friends. We are back, everybody. Wait,
What?
Sports. So seamless. It was beautiful. Thing of beauty. I am one half of your dynamic duo of your sports education, Gina. And over to my right, as always, is the ever faithful, ever intelligent, ever beautiful Miss Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Gina. Thank you for all the affirmations today.
Because it's all true. And over on our boards is the highly skilled, intelligent, and dare I say unbiased, handsome producer extraordinaire, Dr. Robinson. How are you, Dr. Robinson?
Hello.
How was that? Was that a good introduction?
Yeah, that was good. That was great.
Did I earn the $10 you slipped me at the beginning of the show?
Yeah, you did.
Did you notice how he went into his like Rico Suave voice?
He did. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Rico
Suave. What is that from?
It's a song.
I thought so. I was like, I know
too
that.
Sexy for my shirt.
Ding yourself. Go ahead. Because you would have dinged us for that.
No, because he didn't do the proper line. The line you always have to do when you quote that song is, I'm too sexy for my cat.
Too sexy for my cat.
Poor pussy. Poor pussy cat. If you're going to quote that song.
Now it's in my head. Sorry. Dance break.
So anyway.
Okay, we're back on topic.
Today we're doing a show about Wimbledon.
Disclaimer. I love watching tennis. I know barely anything about it.
And I know a little bit about the history of tennis, but I don't watch it.
So you guys are going to really be in for a treat because we're going to all learn together on this one.
Now, where's our producer extraordinaire going?
Did we wear him out already?
I think we did. I think
he needs a breather.
Full disclosure, we were making him laugh so hard that he's sitting in the hallway laughing right now.
I can't see him. We've made it our mission to break him at least once during recording because then we feel like we've accomplished something for the day. Besides educating you all, it's just a personal goal of ours.
Just a personal goal. We love making him laugh. It makes us laugh. And if everybody's laughing, it makes your endorphins better.
Right.
And I could use the extra boost of endorphins this week.
Well, this show's going to make you laugh a lot. Because we're going to see how this goes. So we decided we were going to start with a little bit of background of the history of tennis, partially because Amy's just ready to blow my mind with something, and I can't wait to find out what it is.
I told her I had a question for her, but I wasn't certain if I should wait until the show to ask her because I kind of really want her true reaction.
Okay. Are we going to start there, or are we going to go into the history first and then work
We can
to
start there.
Okay,
because it is a major part of the history.
Ooh, okay.
Okay. So, did you know that there are actually two types of tennis?
I'm sorry.
There are two types of tennis.
Okay, so wait, is it singles and doubles? Is that what we're talking about?
No. There are two distinct tennis games with distinct rules and distinct types of courts.
That they currently play?
Yes.
Huh?
So there's what's known as real tennis or royal tennis.
What the hell?
And there's what we call tennis, which is also historically known as lawn tennis.
So wait.
So real tennis, also known as royal tennis, is what the nobles and royalty were playing in medieval Europe.
Okay.
And the rules changed about 125 years ago for lawn tennis.
This is crazy.
So we'll go into the history and we'll get to how we got to there.
Yeah, we need to, because as you can see, I'm like flabbergasted.
Because I literally made her go, wait, what?
Literally, like, back up, hold the phone.
Yes. So there are two distinct types of tennis. So in the history of tennis, it can be traced back to the 11th century. Had to do my math there as far as my centuries went.
Yeah.
So late 1100s, which would be the 12th century.
That always throws me off too. It's a whole thing.
It's a thing. The 12th century in France, monks and monasteries started playing a game in order to entertain travelers, especially other traveling monks moving from monastery to monastery.
Monks You mean the with the orange, the cloth robes, monks?
The monks that you're thinking of with the Om and everything are more Tibetan monks.
Okay.
Like Catholic monks.
Oh.
Like Friar Tuck.
Okay. I got it. But still,
The
whole idea that monks are playing tennis just makes me laugh.
Monks, and there are nuns in the Catholic Church. Nuns are the females, and monks are the males that have not become clergy.
Okay. That's another whole Wait What episode, but okay.
Yeah, so that will be coming up in Wait, what? Everything else in the world.
Truly.
We literally have this whole idea of doing shows that are just like not sports related, but just things that make Gina go, what?
Which is like everything.
Which we actually might, that's probably what we should name the show. Things that make Gina go,
what?
But anyways.
Back on topic. Ding.
They played this game that we would look at and call it a form of handball. Okay. In fact, the name was called, I got to find the French here because
the English translation of the French. Are you going to try to actually do French?
I can do the French. It's just going to take me a second because
I can't wait to hear this because I'll be trying. And I
had
took
it
several years of
highlighted.
French.
And then the highlight went away. Okay. It was called Jeu de Paume.
Jeu de Paume. Okay.
Okay.
That's
Game
fair.
of the Palm.
Okay. I can see that.
Okay. Eventually, it became a very complex racket-based game instead of a hand game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But go with us here.
Okay.
Okay. So, and please bear with me because I'm pulling things from many different websites as far as the descriptions of the game and the court and everything else went. So real tennis is what became of the original game.
Of the game that was played by the monks.
Right.
Okay.
So when the handball game,
mm-hmm.
the game of the palm,
right,
changed into a racket-based game, it became called tennis. Okay, we now call it real tennis because it was the original version of tennis.
Ah, okay.
It's also called royal tennis in England because it was the game of the royalty.
That's the one they picked up on.
So,
okay.
The game went again from being played with your hand to be playing with these very strange-looking pear-shaped rackets. Which, by the way, if you have PBS All Access or I think BritBox, you can find programs by Lucy Worsley. She's a historian in England. She's actually like the head historian for the National Trust in England. And she does these programs about the royalty.
Yeah.
And about the castles and about different parts of British history. And in several of them, she winds up talking about the game of tennis because it was beloved by Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth.
The first.
And
not the one who just had, did she just have her celebration?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
She just had her platinum jubilee.
That's it. Thank you.
And Queen Elizabeth I really loved playing tennis. And she had courts. Henry had courts built at his main castle.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they're doing the shows about Henry VIII and his castles and stuff, they usually talk about the court. And they will do reenactments of the play. So you'll actually get to see the equipment that they played with.
Interesting.
And them playing on the court. Real tennis courts are an enclosed space. And are played on a clay or paved ground.
Ah, okay.
Or sometimes a wooden ground, kind of like a basketball court or something like that.
Interesting.
Which is why it really does resemble handball, as we know how to play handball now.
Yeah.
Okay. The balls are hard compared to what we view as traditional tennis balls.
Which makes me
so
wonder
they
if
are
that's
more
why
like
they
a
started,
racquetball ball.
Which makes me wonder if that's why they stopped using their hands.
Well, handball balls are racquetball balls. They're very hard. So most handball players have special gloves.
Yeah.
That help absorb
Bear that impact.
the impact.
Right.
The balls nowadays are hard rubber. Back then they were just hard.
Probably stone.
They weren't stone because they needed to have some give to them, but they were very hard. They were wrapped in a little bit of cloth, and that was about it.
Mhm.
So the rackets were a very weird pear-shaped, lopsided type of thing. Instead of being kind of round or oval like we
Like we're
think
used
of it,
to. Right.
it was kind of basically one side was a little bit more flat and the other side was more rounded.
Oh.
And you hit cloth balls, or they had like a hard center wrapped in cloth. And the courts had a very irregular size with them. They had 4 walls. The walls were irregularly sized. One website had described it as being almost hourglass shaped.
Really?
So it kind of came in a little bit on the edges, and it was just very
This sounds very unusual. Weird.
it was more like a racquetball court in
It
the fact that
sounds
you
like it.
wanted to have more surfaces around you.
Yeah.
And the court had a roof that would slope from one side to the other. The net is 5 feet high at the sides and only 3 feet high in the middle.
Okay.
So it's, again, slightly hourglass shaped.
They had a look they were going for, huh? there was a whole thing.
But it went from the monasteries to royalty.
I wonder how that transition happened.
I can see it very easily happening.
It's because the monasteries were, I would assume, at the time, from what I understand about that part of history, very intricately linked with the royalty.
Especially in France.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could, and basically your nobles
Mm-hmm.
may have gone on a, may have gone for their travels to, the holy sites.
So you're thinking like a pilgrimage?
Yes. I was trying to think of what the word was.
I thought that's where you were
there's
going with it.
another word for it as well, and I can't remember. Because the whole Canterbury Tales thing, that's what they, are on. But they would, go to their to visit the holy sites, and they would go through different monasteries on their way.
Right.
So it would not surprise me to find out that the French royals had seen
And we're like, ooh, what is this?
this game on their way and started to want to play it and learn it, and then it eventually made its way to England, where it became even bigger and more popular. So royal tennis is still known as more of a, quote, nobles game.
I.e. the rich people still play it.
I.e., you don't even play it if you're rich if you don't have a title in England.
Oh, that kind of rich. Okay.
It's a nobles game. You're titled nobility. You're not a noble if you're just rich.
Oh, well then never mind. It's a game, so let's just say it's a game that none of us will probably ever play. Okay.
Yes. So, again, it's very similar to our racquetball. It's just got different rules because, of course, racquetball courts here are very small things, and you're bouncing off of the walls more than trying to get over a net. So it's take racquetball and mix it with tennis.
And there you go.
Lawn tennis, and there you go. That's what you have. It's kind of like how pickleball is like, wiffle ball plus ping pong plus tennis.
Yeah.
Then you come to the 1870s.
Which would be is that the 1700s in that?
No.
Is that math right?
1870s would be the 19th century.
Dang it. I hate that math. Okay. I went backwards instead of, okay.
Yeah. So the lawn tennis game is credited to a nobleman in England, and I'm trying to find his name.
So lawn tennis is the tennis that we know. As
No.
mo-
Yeah. Lawn
modern
tennis is what we know.
Okay.
In fact, in Europe, it's actually Wimbledon is the home of lawn tennis championships.
Ah, okay.
They actually say it all out like that. We don't here. It's just Wimbledon.
Yeah, because we're lazy. They're not doing that.
Oh, by the way,
No.
any idea how tennis actually got its name?
No. I'm not even going to pretend like I do. Have any clue. Don't look at him. He knows less than we do.
Well, he was like half asleep over there, probably because it's like 1 billion degrees in here.
Yeah.
That's
why he went outside to get some air.
So, tennis, it is believed that it got its name because while the monks were playing, they would shout out, "Tenise,"
Tenise.
which in French means take heed.
Tenise.
Because
Interesting.
they are hitting a ball at an opposite person.
Exactly. Like,
Take heed.
that's a way more, fun name than take heed.
Well, but tenise, Tenez,
Ah, a different
became
spelling and everything.
tennis.
Probably just a translational thing too.
Well, and I'm probably breaking the French all over the place because
Don't judge us, y'all. We're Americans. That's what we do.
I took 5 years of Spanish and 1 semester of French, and it messed me up completely on all of my pronunciations of everything.
That's why we sat here before the show.
So
trying
the
to count.
Z is probably actually supposed to be an S sound, so it would be tennis.
Tennis.
But
Maybe. Well, if you speak French, you can feel free to update us on that and give us a correction.
so
Knowledge is power. Da-da-da-da. I haven't done it in a while.
Major Walter Wingfield invented the version of tennis that could be played outdoors on a lawn.
Okay.
He had given it a Greek name I'm not even going to try to pronounce.
Wait and see. Maybe I can give it a shot. Okay, I changed my mind. Here, you can have that back. I'm not trying that.
But the Greek meant playing ball.
Okay.
And it was played by the rich non-noble Englishmen on manor house lawns.
Manor houses. Okay.
But this is the first instance where tennis began to look like the tennis that we know.
Okay.
With courts and lines and outside and the single net that's the single height across and
Not
and
higher on the
everything.
outsides. The picture of that is just like, I would look at that nowadays and be like, I'm not playing on that.
And fun fact, the very first game of lawn tennis was played in the U.S. in 1874.
Wow.
So,
Interesting.
yes. So the other, there's actually a list I found of the top 10 fascinating things about tennis history. One of the things, talks about the balls. They were actually made out of wood, wrapped in cloth.
Ah, okay.
And they only started using the lawn tennis balls once they found a cellulose material. They could make the bouncier balls.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which basically means once they discovered how to mold rubber.
Then we got the ball we know of
I'm going to
today.
translate cellulose material,
Rubber.
natural rubber.
Aren't you glad we have a librarian? Because she knows what that is.
And I know that you're probably going to go into the scoring, but do you know how we got those funky scores in the first place?
No, and I'm sure it's some crazy thing. Why do we have these? Why? Because I was reading. I'm going to, just so you guys know, I'm going to cover like the scoring piece of it. But I was looking through and reading this, and I was just like, why? Why can't we just call them what they are? But go ahead.
So I was going to say, do you want me to wait until we get to the scoring part, or do you want to know the history of it now?
I want to know now because it just helps me to understand what I read.
Okay, so it is believed that the scoring system in tennis, it's crazy and complicated, just to let you guys know.
I knew it would be.
Because, most sports try to keep it simple. A point is a point,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or, A touchdown is 7 points.
Right.
But it's always 7 points.
Regardless, right.
Right? It is believed the scoring system comes from medieval France and the monks that were playing. And that the reason why the score is 15, 30, and 40 has to do with the fact that they used to use the face of a clock that was on one end of the court to help keep score. They would turn the hands to the parts of the clock. And the biggest parts on the clock are always what?
The quarter segment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not as complicated and ridiculous as I thought you were
So
going to say.
originally, the score was 15, 30, 45, and 60. And when the player reached 60, the game was ended. But because the rules also said that you had to win by two,
yeah,
they amended it to 15, 30, 40, 50, 60.
So you could always be okay. That makes sense. Yeah, because it was like, how do you? Yeah, I can see that.
So
A
there's
clock face is the reason for this nonsense.
There was another theory that it referenced the amount of yards the ball traveled with each score. So I don't know how. Again, I don't understand tennis at all. At all.
Let me emphasize this. At all.
But it says here today's courts measured a standard 78 feet long. But the early courts were 90 yards with 45 yards per side.
Okay.
Each time a player scored, players moved 15 feet forward. So the third point was scored with both players up at the net.
Oh.
And so the final point was made at 10 yards. So it was 45, 50, so they would do 15, 15, and then 10.
Right.
I don't know. It makes more sense that it was the clock to me.
I think so, because the rest of it's just kind of like,
The rest of it makes my brain hurt.
right? Like math. Anyway. But okay, looking at this, it makes more sense, but even like the way we score now doesn't completely match up with that. But that's besides the point. Thank you for that, because it does help me to look at it and not be quite as confused. So, all right. So we talked about a little bit about the history, because we talked about that. You have to understand the background of something to really understand why we are where we are now, and why we have two versions of tennis that. There's a reason why I never knew about the other one.
Eli missed that entire discussion. He's like, wait, what?
Clearly, we're not. You'll never have to worry about the other one. We're not rich enough or titled enough to ever play it. So there you go. That's the gist of the other tennis, royal tennis.
Outside of England, you don't have to be nobility to play real tennis.
Wow.
But there are very, very few real tennis courts.
I'm sure. With that tomfoolery.
The thing was, I even saw that there was like even a different name for it if you were in Australia.
Well, Australia is where they dumped their. Let me not say that. Australia was where they sent their not so desired people of the English population. So that kind of doesn't surprise me either, that it would be over there in some form or fashion.
So
I was gonna say something real bad. It's like don't say that, Gina.
So there are three basic names for it: real tennis, court tennis, or royal tennis.
I've heard of court tennis. I have heard of court tennis. I never knew that it was different than regular tennis that we know of, but I have heard of that.
Because we all think tennis played on a court. We didn't realize that court tennis, but it's court as in
royal court. Makes so much sense. All right, so this is going to be a very general overview of how you play tennis. Partially just because Wimbledon's coming up and we don't want to let that go by. So I'm using the U.S. Tennis Association website, which I will post a link to on our page, so you guys can actually read this all over yourself. But gameplay is as follows. You can play singles tennis or doubles tennis, which means you either play one-on-one or 2 against 2. All right, simple enough.
And there's mixed doubles, right?
Yes, there is mixed doubles, which means a guy and a girl play against a guy and a girl. So I don't know if they do all of those at Wimbledon. We'll have to look that up. I don't know. I think so.
Yeah.
Wimbledon goes on for a while, too.
Yeah, so it started on the 20th, and it goes until July 10th.
Yeah, they play a long time.
So probably by the time this gets posted, we will be getting into the final rounds of Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Which is the rounds that they put on TV. let's be honest, they're not putting the first round on, major channel TV.
I know. You probably have to have like a tennis channel subscription.
Or it's on like ESPN3 or something.
Something random. Yeah. Until you get to like the big names at the end of the tournament.
Or the big names at the beginning of the tournament that are playing like nobody's.
Very true. Which, that's neither here nor there. But interestingly enough, there's actually also wheelchair tennis. Because, the world has become more accepting of people who are differently abled, which is good. But we'll go into starting the match. This is really weird to me. I didn't know that I've never actually seen a game of tennis started from the very beginning. So this was weird.
Yeah, there are things that they don't show on TV. It's kind of like, how they don't always show the coin toss on the games unless it's a big game on football. There are things that they don't they don't
it's
always show the
national
anthem when it's a regular season game.
Right.
They don't generally show how they decide who's going to start the match on TV because they're still in the middle of commentating.
Exactly. But they do have a way of determining who goes first, just like any sport. So either player or team will spin their racket, and the winner of the spin will have 3 options. I don't know how they determine who wins the spin. If it depends on how it lands, it doesn't go into that much detail. But either way, you either choose to serve or receive, like football, the side of the court you want to start on, because they do change sides eventually, and you get to defer your choice to the opponent. So, but the opponent cannot defer back. So you can say, I want them to serve first, or I want them to be on this side of the court first.
So in that way, it's like the coin toss in football.
Exactly.
Where
exactly.
They get to make all these decisions if they win it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So once the winner of the toss chooses one of the options above, because I guess you only get to pick from one of those 3, whichever one you want to pick from. Then the opponent has the remaining choice. So you get to choose for them, and then they get to choose for you, whatever you don't pick from those 3 options, which is interesting that you both get to have a say in how the other player plays the game for the beginning of it. So, okay, we talked about the scoring system, so let's just get that out the way, because it's still relatively complicated.
Love. Love.
15. Deuce.
30 love.
30 love.
All I know about tennis is love.
Fault. You know that too.
Yeah. Fault. Love.
So love, anybody want to take a guess what that means?
That's the 0, right?
That's 0. So whenever it's love, 15 love, 40 love, there can actually be, it means 0 and somebody scored some amount of points. We'll get into that now. 1 point is 15. Don't ask me why, but that's just how they score.
I just told you why.
Well, yeah, the clock face
The
thing.
clock face.
So when they say 15, love, 0, 1, essentially, in our basic understanding. If you hear 15, 30, it's 1 point, and the other player has 2 points. So 30 is 2 points. And then 3 points is 40. So I'm going to go down that list again because I'm sure somebody was like, wait, what? Like I always do. Love is 0 points. 15 is 1 point. 30 is 2 points, and 40 is 3 points. So you can score up to a maximum of 3 points before you go into another level of scoring.
So
Go.
I had a question about why 0 is love.
Mm-hmm.
And to not make you have to look things up at the same time.
I appreciate you.
I'm sitting here in my head, I'm like, how did they get to a point where they would use the word love for
right.
0? And the only thing I could find was from Merriam-Webster. I love Merriam-Webster. And it said that there's no clear proof as to why love came to be, but the accepted theory is that those with 0 points were still playing for the love of the game despite their losing score.
Aw, that's actually kind of sweet. Like, I just love playing so much, I don't care that I'm losing. That I'm a loser.
So, it actually is kind of a diss if you think about it.
It is. Like, you're going to lose this game, so.
Love, 15.
If you love 40, you really are playing.
And you're hearing the announcer and you're like, shut up, I'm not playing for the love of the game anymore.
That's so messed up. That's
maybe that's just my, my non-tennis playing Americanized brain. So
that's
anyways.
Funny. So a tied score is all. So whenever you hear all, that's all they say. It means either both players have 1 point, Both players have 2 points, or both players have 3 points.
So usually they'll say like love all,
exactly.
15 all.
Exactly. So
So that way they're not saying love.
they both just love the game so much and they suck, which would probably be what it would be if we were playing tennis. And then when we get to both players having 40-40, it drops into what's called a deuce, which means they both have 3 points at that point. Deuce points then become a whole thing. I'm going to keep it real simple and general based off of what it said on here. When you hear deuce, now we determine who can win the point match, the match point.
Mm-hmm.
So if a server scores and they're both at 3 points apiece, then it's called an add-in. If the receiver, the person who receives the person's serve, which we'll get into that in another time, we're just talking about scoring right now, it's called an add-out. So you can always be above somebody, you can tie, and then whoever serves the ball, they get the advantage if they get the next point. Whoever receives it, if they get the next point, they get the advantage. That's all you need to understand about that. Keep it general.
I have a question about that.
Go.
Because the few amount of times that I've watched have been, watching when somebody else is watching.
Yes.
Or I'll sometimes catch like Olympic play. You will hear them talk about how many games are in a set.
Yes.
Because I know, like, you can tie a match and still win your set.
Yes.
And is there a rule for, like, if you've got a tied set?
There is indeed. Okay, so we'll kind of jump onto that. Well, first of all, let me really quickly backtrack to the deuce thing, because that can be really confusing. So the way that the U.S. Tennis Association explains it, I'm going to read it the way they have it. The only time that scoring is a little bit more complicated is when you and your opponent have both won 3 points. The score is 40-40. This is, like I said, called a deuce. When the score reaches deuce, one player or team, because remember you can play doubles, will need to win at least 2 points in a row to win the game. All right? When the server wins the deuce point, which means they've scored 2 in a row, then, like I said, it's called an add-in. But when they lose the deuce point, it's called an add-out, which means the team who received the ball from the person who hit it over the net first wins the point for that set. The set is actually just back and forth. Whoever wins that point off of that back and forth encounter, however long that goes. Sometimes those go quite a while. And if you ever watch tennis and watch some of the great players, you'll be sitting there forever waiting for somebody to score a point. Or if for some reason, let's say it's a double fault, like they both don't get the ball back over, or they both serve and somebody hits the net or it goes out of bounds, it can stay in deuce. It just stays there until somebody wins 2 points. So to your question about sets, there are actually 2 types of sets, ways of scoring in tennis. There's an advantage set and a tiebreak set. So the advantage set, a player or team needs to win 6 games by at least 2 to win the set. So the set is all of the points that you have scored throughout that entire game. This means that there is no tiebreak, this means that there is no tiebreak game played at 6-6. Because in a set, there is 6 points you have to score. You always have to win by 2. So you can play up to 6 sets, and then you go into a tiebreak set, which is when, if the score gets to 5-5 or 5-all, because all means tied, one player must win the next 2 games to win that whole set of points they've gone back and forth trying to score. Does that make sense? Sort of?
No, not at all, but that's okay. There's a reason why I never really got into tennis with gym class or anything else.
Yeah, but just know within a game there is 6 points that you're trying to score. You always have to win by 2 points.
So the game has 6 sets or 6 matches.
6 matches.
Okay, each match is a point for the set for the game, right?
Yep.
So if you are playing a match, you also have to win the match by 2 points. So each match has to win by 2 points. Then you get a point in the game column.
Yep.
And then you have to have 2 points more than your opponent in the game column.
Yep.
Okay, so this basically means that there's two different sets of scores.
Yep. Throughout the entire time you're watching two players or two teams play against each
Dr.
other.
Robinson, does this make any sense at all?
He tuned out at the beginning of the show, to be perfectly honest. He's not even here anymore. He's like, well, the mics are still working. I can still hear them.
I was going to say, I looked over and the mic was all the way against the wall.
I'm still here.
Does that scoring make any kind of sense?
No.
But this is why my mom always said, if you think about games like tennis, it was never meant for the layman to learn how to play. Honestly, it was meant for people who had money, who can afford to buy these expensive pieces of equipment.
Who had time to waste.
Exactly. Who had nothing better to do than make this overly complicated game. Which is kind of how, before I really understood golf, is kind of how I felt about golf. It was just one of those games where it's like, it wasn't meant for the layman to play. But it's a lot easier to understand than tennis.
At least golf, you get your ball in the hole and
You move on.
you move forward.
So, okay, scoring a tiebreak. You asked about that. So, in a tiebreak game, again, this is from the U.S. Tennis Association's website. In a tiebreak game, when it's 5-all and you're at that last point where you can win the match before you go on to the next scoring set, the next person who was due to serve will start the tiebreak game, which is that back and forth. One serve point to, let me start over. In a tiebreak game, the next person who was due to serve will start the tiebreak game and serve 1 point to the deuce side of the court. So I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this because it took me a second to kind of piece this together. If we're tied, whoever serves is serving to, even I'm confused trying to explain this, but whoever serves to the other side of the court has to win, essentially.
Look, I'm going to just say this. I'm more concerned about how do I tell if my ball has made a point or not. Because honestly, if I don't know if I've scored a point, it doesn't matter if I've scored a point.
The most common format used to play tennis is the best of 3 tiebreak sets. So that means that if you don't win the first 2 sets, the third set will determine the match. So usually if you look at like the complete score of a game, they don't always go to 6. If I win the first 2 points, there's no point in us playing anymore because I've won by 2.
Right.
I always have to win by 2. So ultimately, you score by either not having your opponent return the serve. They just can't get there fast enough. Or they fault so much. I think you have to fault so many numbers of times. Mm-hmm. Either they serve and they hit the net, or they serve it and they hit it too hard and it goes out of bounds. And you automatically get that point. It's like a walk in baseball. You get so many pitches as a walk, and then you just walk that player. Mm-hmm. So same thing in tennis. You only get so many chances to make a mistake as the server, and then at that point, they just give the other person the point. And the ball changes hands, and now the other person gets to serve.
So how exactly do I earn a point, though? Because, again, that's the part that confuses me the most. Okay. Because I'm never certain. I'm like, when I learned pickleball, I learned a little bit. Yeah. But it still was like, wait, what? I have to like bounce the ball so many times, and where does it have to hit? And it has to hit before or after a particular line. And I'm like, I'm not coordinated enough to be able to do any of that stuff. So I just never worried about it. These are why I sat out the days that we went and played tennis in gym.
She sat out.
I did. I never gave my parents the permission slip that allowed us to go to the tennis courts.
Ooh, you cheater.
Because I knew I would just get hit with a ball.
Fair. Now, I will say there are different scoring.
Why are you laughing at me, Dr. Robinson?
Because he's a jerk.
He is liking the idea of me getting hit by a ball. That's what it is.
He's a jerk. Okay, so let me see if I can find a simple explanation. I had one pulled up and I lost it. Okay, here we go. So, of course, there's different levels of play based on, there's college tennis, professional tennis, there's Olympic tennis. So I'm going to use the Olympic tennis breakdown because they broke it down really well of how you actually score a point. So a tennis match begins with, of course, like the racket spin. The player who wins the toss chooses to serve, receive, or pick which side they want to start the match. Pick the side they want to start the match from. The serving player stands behind the baseline of his side of the court and within bounds of the center mark. So there's actually like right underneath the net, there's a center mark. For a successful serve, the server has to toss the ball up with his non-playing hand and hit it with the racket before it bounces. That's a fault if it bounces. A foul is essentially a mistake on the part of the person who's serving.
Yes, and every
Or
time
returning the
I tried, it
serve.
would go through the air.
It's like when you toss your own ball up in baseball and you try to hit it and nothing
Yeah,
happens.
exactly. That's pretty much it. I could serve in volleyball that way. I couldn't serve.
It's a
in
lot of
tennis that
hand-eye
way.
coordination that I don't have either. The ball needs to cross the net and land within the serving area, which is marked on the diagonally opposite side of the court for it to be deemed legal. So it has to land in the right part of the court, essentially, for it to be able to be a ball that counts. So, like, you ever seen somebody hit the ball and it hits the wall? They
This
hit it
is
so
why the
hard.
judges sit up in lifeguard towers.
Yes, because you have to be able to see that whole court to determine if it landed right inside of the area of play. And if that lands in an area that's not counted as play, that's a point for the person that you served to. Each player is allowed 2 serves per point, so you get 2 tries to get it over the net before they switch the sides to the other person. If the player hits the net or the ball, stop phone, or the ball's first bounce occurs outside of the serving area, it's called a service fault, and the server has a second serve to initiate the point. So if they don't get it in 2 tries, they either have to get it over the net or get it within that play area of the court. If that doesn't work, then the point is awarded to the person they were serving the ball to. If the server's foot touches the baseline or goes out of bounds of the sideline, it's known as a foot fault, and the server loses the point. If the player commits a fault on his second serve, so this is the second time you're trying to get over, maybe the first time you hit the net, you just didn't get the ball up high enough. It's called a double fault because you messed up twice in a row, and the receiving player gets the point. So you have several ways where you, as the person who's serving the ball, can screw up and lose a point for yourself.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. If I can lose points by playing.
Yeah. That's why
Yeah.
tennis it's complicated. It's tricky. If the server manages to land a legal serve and the receiver is unable to return the ball, that's called an ace, and the server gets the point. So it's so backwards in that way that the server has 3 ways they can lose a point, and the receiver only has 1. I just can't get it back over the side, and I lose a point to the server. But as the server, if I hit the net, if I don't get it in the right play area, if I mess up twice in a row, I can lose a point just like that. So I bet you more people choose to receive than to serve at the beginning of a match. I bet you they would. I would. If it means that I would not lose as many or having as many opportunities to lose a point, I'm receiving first. Any point that is initiated by the server, it is the job of the receiver, of course, to return it successfully. Once the serve is returned, the 2 players engage in a rally. So that's that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's the one that can go forever, just until somebody messes up. Trading shots back and forth within baselines and sidelines. So it's pretty obvious, like on most courts, there's that thick white line on the outside. The one closest to the wall behind the player is the baseline. The one along the sides where the judges sit is the sidelines. A player must also wait for the ball to pass the net. So you can't just run up and hit the ball before it crosses over to you on the other side of the net. And you cannot step over the net to hit the ball. It sounds obvious, but I'm sure somebody would try to cheat. There's a reason that rule exists.
Well, okay. So here's my question.
Okay.
If you're in that volley, you don't have to always wait for it to bounce before you can hit it back, right?
Nope. You only get 1 bounce. It can only hit the ground once before you volley it back or hit it back over the net.
I just wanted to make sure because I was like, if it's line driving towards my head, I'm just going to,
I'm
hit
whacking
it
that
back.
bad boy. Yeah, no. You can definitely hit it straight back over. You can't let it hit more than once on the ground, though.
Okay.
No double bounces. And then we talked about the scoring system. Really quickly, we'll talk about an advantage. You'll hear that sometimes. Even sometimes I've seen it where they'll post, like, Advantage Williams. I'll just use her because she's the big name in tennis right now because she's playing Wimbledon. We talked about deuce is when the score is tied. You've each scored 3 points. After deuce, the player who wins the next point has advantage. So you haven't won yet because you've only got 1 point above the other person at this point.
But you're almost there.
Right. If you score this next point, you've won that match. If the player or team, because again you can do doubles, who has the advantage wins the next point, they win that game, and you move on to the next game where you're going through the 15, 30, blah, 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 blah. how to win. We know a player typically has to win 4 points to win a game, and a minimum of 6 games. So you can go up to 6 because you always, of course, have to win by 2. A player or team has to win 3 sets in a best of 5 match, or 2 sets in a best of 3. Always besting them by 2. Players are required to switch sides at the end of the first, third, and every other subsequent odd set game. So if you happen to go beyond 3 games, you just can't knock them out in that first 2 games. You have to switch sides. I'm trying to think. I think that's the biggest thing. Now, obviously, when you get into things like Grand Slams, that's a whole different set to a great degree of rules of how they determine.
Yeah, well,
we're not
the
going
Grand
there.
Slam is like a thing where you have to win certain tournaments
Exactly.
in order to get your Grand Slam.
Mm-hmm.
There are similar things in golf as well.
Yep.
And volleyball and a lot of other things. I mean, honestly, that's what the Triple Crown is. If you think about it
That's true.
in racing, it's when you win those 3 particular races in horse racing. So, there's lots of places where they do things like that. Basically, it's a way of saying you are one of the best ever because you've hit and won a championship in all of these places that are viewed as the best championships to win.
Right. Exactly.
So, interesting thing that I had actually forgotten to bring up as part of Wimbledon's history in particular is, first off, the ball boys and girls.
Yes. They're very interesting people.
The uniforms that they wear. Do you know who invented them?
No. I want to say maybe a fashion designer because that seems to be a trend, but okay.
So, Ralph Lauren.
Really?
They are Ralph
Wait a
Lauren.
minute. Really?
That makes
Yep.
perfect sense though because that's what he's known for is like tennis polos.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that.
Ralph Lauren.
Ralph Lauren. So
Um,
when did is there a history of like when he first introduced the ball
I
girl
am
and boys uniforms?
Trying to find that because I think it was on the UK History Channel site.
Well, while you're looking at that, we'll talk a little bit.
Here.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So it's in there. Did you know? So Wimbledon's navy blue and cream uniforms worn by all the all the ball boys and girls are made by the American designer Ralph Lauren. It doesn't say what year.
Okay.
The yellow balls were not used in Wimbledon until modern play. But previously, they were white tennis balls, which are the traditional tennis balls.
Right.
We all think of yellow balls because in 1986, Wimbledon switched to yellow balls. Now, they were probably being used in other places around the world, Wimbledon being very stoked in tradition. Did not switch until 1986. The yellow balls were deemed more visible to TV cameras.
Sure.
So the white balls disappeared more on TV. I did not know that there was actually a reference to tennis in William Shakespeare.
There is?
In Henry V, the game is referred to when Henry asks, "What treasures do you have, uncle?" And Exeter replies, "Tennis balls, my liege."
Huh.
I had no idea. I'd never read Henry V.
Me either.
So,
Me either.
And then the other thing that I thought was very interesting was the area around Wimbledon was actually the Royal. I gotta find it again. But it was like the Royal Croquet Club.
So it's
originally.
within this area?
So the area that Wimbledon is built in
Yeah.
was actually an area of London that was the Royal Croquet Club back,
excuse me.
way back, way back when.
Croquet. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Again, another sport that the layman is just not meant to understand really well or play.
Yeah, I'm reconnecting to the internet so that I can look up Wimbledon specifically because I accidentally closed out that tab.
That's funny.
Because that's, what I do. I close tabs by accident.
Well, while you're looking that up, we'll talk about one more thing when it comes to the scoring. In tennis, you will hear a lot of argument about whether something is in or out. It's just like in baseball with the foul lines, like football with the sidelines. So whether a shot is in or out is the big question behind every shot, and why people like John McEnroe are famous for who they are, for losing their temper, because it's really the people who sit on the sidelines in the lifeguard chairs are the court officials, and they determine whether a ball is in or out of bounds. In a game of singles, the ball must hit within both service courts and the backcourt and the alley line, as marked in the diagram, which I'll post online, to be scored. Balls hit in between. If it lands slightly on the line, if it lands in between certain areas, the ball can be counted as out. They're earning your opponent a point. So in doubles games, the balls must be hit within both the service courts, so where you're standing when you hit the ball, the back court, which is that area behind that white line close to the wall, and the area between the alley line and the sideline for a point to be scored. So tennis, when it comes to ins and outs, is very much a game of the judgment of the officials, because you as a player can't truly see where the ball hits, and a lot of times on a tennis match on TV, you'll see where the ball hits, and it's like that little diagram or that little shaded spot. Is it just enough over the line? Is it just enough in the line? It's a whole subjective thing, but you'll hear a lot of in or out arguments with tennis. So,
Yes. So, as far as Wimbledon goes, I don't know if you know that there's an actual dress code for Wimbledon.
you would never be able to tell because Serena just be doing her own thing.
Well, it's not for the players.
It's for the people who work there.
For the people who are viewing, the patrons, the people coming into the court. If you buy a ticket, you have to adhere by their dress code.
What?
Because, as I was saying, the Royal Croquet Club owns Wimbledon.
Oh.
They are a country club, shall we say.
Gotcha. Well, that's all you needed to say.
So not only do the players have a particular dress code that they have to adhere by, and yes, Serena has gotten in trouble for some of her outfits.
I'm sure.
They have to, the viewers have to have, and there are etiquette codes that you cannot break at Wimbledon.
Oh,
as a spectator.
They will put you out, won't they?
They will. They will.
Man, oh man. Okay. I'm intrigued now. Go ahead.
So I'm still, looking at the official Wimbledon, the Wimbledon Experience website.
Oh Lord, they have a whole website dedicated to this?
Yes, and
serious business.
They have an entire section talking about the queue, which is the line. If you don't know British English,
yes.
The queue is the waiting line. Yes, that Royal Croquet Club was formed back in the days before golf was played in England.
Really?
So the history of golf, it came from Scotland. Okay?
Right.
It was a Scottish game. It was looked down upon by English royalty, and in medieval England, in Queen Elizabeth times, there was a Queen of Scotland and a Queen of England, and they were separate.
Right.
Queen Elizabeth's successor, James I, is the first to be King of England and Scotland. And that's when things started to get unified. So golf was a Scottish game. Golf's history goes back at least as far as tennis. But my guess is that they were playing croquet, and I'd have to look at the history of croquet, which I have not done,
making sure it all
in
lines
England.
up. Right.
And that's why there was a Wimbledon Croquet Club or whatever. I don't know. I haven't found in the history of Wimbledon specifically when that became an actual tennis court club. So I have a feeling we're getting signals.
Yeah,
that
we were
wasn't
at the
being seen,
we were at the 10-minute mark. So
No, I just saw Gina crack open Some peanuts, and that is a cardinal sin while you're live on the
Sorry,
air.
I didn't realize it was going to be so loud. I'm keeping myself from feeling frustrated at the fact that I hope I explained that well.
I think you did.
But tennis is one of those sports where I feel like it makes more sense when I see it in person than when I try to visualize it in my head.
Well, and there's so much. It's like when we talked about golf, where there's so much history behind the one tournament.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on with
The actual game itself. Yeah.
That trying to put it all together
Gives
is very complicated.
Right.
And especially when you are a complete novice, as I am. Like I said, I knew that I didn't even want to attempt to play in high school, and therefore, I mean, where I went to high school, we had a park nearby that had all these courts, and that's where they would take us. And I was like, oh, I don't know what happened to my permission slip.
The dog ate it.
So it wasn't.
Or in your case, the cat ate it.
Well, it wasn't, or my little brother.
Either way,
my little brother put it in the gerbil cage. We had gerbils and guinea pigs and all sorts of stuff when I was in high school. So, but it's not like basketball or baseball or even track where like every school has that.
Exactly. Oh, heck yeah, because tennis is not one of those sports that you find at local public high schools unless you live in like a more well-to-do area.
No, there's actually a Cleveland School District tennis team.
Is there?
Yes.
Oh, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm. So, because they actually play at the courts on MLK.
Oh.
The Eliza something courts.
Yeah.
On MLK.
So I just went to South and we didn't have one. Okay.
Yeah, no. you have to be at, like, if you want to be on the tennis team, you have to, like, Cleveland school sports are very interesting in the fact that each of the schools have certain sports, and if you're going to a school that doesn't have a football team, you have to ask to get onto a football team. You don't necessarily have to transfer to that school, but you have to somehow get yourself to that school that has a football team in order to be able to play.
Makes sense.
And go to practice and whatever. So it's a very complicated thing.
But anyway, that's a whole other conversation for another day.
It is, and Eli's about to like pull his hair out because we're at the end of time, and so we don't even have time to tell you really how to contact us.
But you guys know by now.
I mean, if you're listening to us, you know how to contact us. Just click on the comments part of wherever you're listening to us.
Right, exactly. And we will happily get back to you. If you have other questions or things that we missed, or maybe something I misquoted, because it's very possible, let us know.
Thank you, guys. We hope you enjoyed everything, and let us know if you actually enjoyed Wimbledon this year.
Go Serena!